Hello again, and we're back in the Fennel shed, this time to show you how to make block number 7. Block number 7 is kind of exciting because it's the set of 4 blocks that go into the 4 corners, and that completes the whole centerpiece of our quilt. When we were working from the middle out as far as the log cabin stage, we were focusing very much on lines that centered around the middle of the quilt and drew the eye into the middle of the quilt. Now at this stage we're out in the corners, and it's a block that draws the eye then out into the corners and out to the border. So this is the block. If I can hold it there. There's a lot of small detailed elements to this. So what we do is we make those small detailed pieces first, and then once those are constructed, we can then assemble the block. It's similar to the way you'd assemble a log cabin in that we start from one corner and add side, top, side, top, side, top, all the way through. But first of all, we have to prepare those elements. The very first thing that we do is we make 8 of these, 8 little 4-patch. If you go right the way back to part 1 and the technique that we showed, and you'll see it in your pattern, cut 2 strips, sew them together, press them light to dark, set one on top of the other, light to the dark, dark to the light, and mark, sew, and then cut through the slices. You'll get lovely neat 4 patches like this. You'll need 8 of those in total, and that forms the sort of, it's a stem, it's almost like a flower shape, and this is the stem, and it leads, as I say, leads the eye out. So once you have those done, they set in place. We also keep another 4 slices like this. This is very similar. It is just one slice of the dark number 8 and the light, and then a little slice of background at an L beside it, and that forms the opposite end of that diagonal as it runs through the block. Okay, what's the next thing that we have to do? I'm going to actually sew this in real time while you're here with me. All of these outer edges, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and 2 down here, need to have one corner stitched and covered with your background in order to create the shape. And now the reason why I didn't go ahead and do that, and the reason why I want to show you what I'm doing, is that you have to keep in mind that these are left hands and these are right hands coming in this way. So be sure and treat them that way. So I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 elements to the machine now, and stitch on that background corner triangle so that you can see the difference that that makes to the block straight away. 1. So onto every one of these on the end, I have placed my little 2.5 inch square of my background fabric, and it goes onto the outer edge, and I put just a crease across the diagonal. You can mark that with a pen if you don't feel the crease is enough to keep you right, but you're going to actually be sewing on that diagonal. And remember, this is the one that's going on the left hand side, so you're coming upwards like this on all of these. And then once I get those stitched, because this piece of fabric is going to be cut away and could be going to waste, there's a great technique where you can sew a second line, cut between the 2 lines, and the little piece that you have left over automatically becomes a tiny, tiny little miniature half square triangle. You can save those and use them in another project. It just saves you throwing an awful lot of tiny triangles into the waste, because they're very hard to use. The little small half square triangles can be quite useful. So I'm going to sew for a while. So that's all of the elements for down one side, stitched once and then stitched again with a 1/2 inch, which is your 1/4 inch seam allowance twice, left in between your two seam lines. And just for speed now, trimming these with the scissors, you could do it on the cutting board if you wish. So you see that all these little cutaway pieces become tiny half square triangles, which then in turn can be used as the center of squares, or if you like making crumb quilts with tiny little pieces, you'll have lots and lots of those. The elements that are going into the quilt, we're going to take these to the ironing board, and it's really important to press those light background triangles in towards the dark. That does a few things. It gives you a lovely crisp definition along that line. It means that if you're coming back to quilt in the ditch or to stipple quilt these areas, you don't have that bump of the contrast fabric underneath. You can consistently know that you can work on all your background areas and not find your needle bumping onto the fabric beneath. It also means you don't have that shadow line. So for all kinds of reasons, all of these get pressed back towards the light, and you get lovely, clean, well-defined lines where your background fabric contrasts with the main fabrics. So now if you can see the difference that by adding these half triangles along the outer edges all the way along here, how it just creates that shape. Now we have prepared everything that we need through as far as this line. I describe this in the pattern as the first petals, second petals, third and fourth, because these effectively are the petals that overlap to become the flower. The most complex one is this first set, and I haven't put those together yet because I need to show you some more of the elements that are needed. So the first thing that we do is do exactly what we've just done with these outer corners, but on the inner corners of these first two pieces. One going left and one going right. And I'm going to sew those and put those back into place. So now I've done the same corner triangle trick on these two elements, and that brings me down to what is probably the most complex small piece within this block, which is this little K square, because it's like capital letter K, one line going this way, another line going that way. And this is one of the reasons why when you're doing blocks like this in any quilt, very often in the directions they'll say use small to medium sized non-directional prints. So you can see that once I put that seam in place, one piece will be indistinguishable from the other. The seam will disappear. There's something similar will happen here, because had you got a stripe or a check or a very big pattern, that would jar on the eye and it would ruin the effect. So this is why we have all of this is small to medium non-directional prints. And this element is made up of these quarter squares. Now we did a set of these in part 6, so you know how it's done. But on this occasion, when we mark one diagonal, we can sew on each side of the diagonal, because last month we wanted them to rotate clockwise, so we wanted them all to be going in the same direction. This month we want to have left-handed ones and right-handed ones. So for this we go right across and sew on either side of that diagonal, which is what I've done. Then I haven't marked the full line through the other diagonal, but I've marked my starting and ending point. If you wish, you can mark the full line. I cut through that one first, because the marked line in between the seams you can always find even if the pieces drop on the floor and you pick them up again. And that gives me 4 of these quarter square triangle sets, and you can see there half of them are left-handed and half of them are right-handed. So one will fit in here and the opposite one will fit in there. So you make 2 sets like this in order to complete your 4 blocks. Once those are done and pressed, again the light towards the dark, to always have your background fabric sitting literally in the background behind your feature fabrics. Then we sew these together across the diagonal, which is what I'm about to do. So now I have stitched together these 2 key elements, and as you can see, it's a right hand and a left-handed pair. And before I add them into the mix, I've got to trim them 2.5 inches square, take off all the rough edges and the tails, and leave us with a really nice clean square to add into the row. And that is, I'm using the 45-degree line on my ruler to make sure that that blue square stays on the diagonal. Then I'm using the measurement on the ruler to tell me when I'm 2.5 inches from the inner edge to the outer edge. And the difference then between the untrimmed and the trimmed is quite noticeable. So that one will sit in there and complete that row. Same treatment for the other one. Now, I sew these 3 elements together and these 4 elements together. I sew that onto that, and I sew this as a 4 patch, and then you see it coming together, starting from this corner, adding the next frame and the next and the next, and so on until the block is complete. So just to recap, you start at this outer corner and add bottom, side, all the way around until you get to the far corner. And you can see now how the design works on a whole. And I'm going to take it and put it where it should be in the quilt. So very happy to be placing the first of the 4 corners, because we really feel like we're making progress now. And now hopefully it makes sense that in here we were doing everything about drawing the eye and emphasizing this lovely central whole area of the quilt, that when this is on a bed or even on a wall, this is where the eye is being drawn into. But as we move out, certainly outside the log cabin frame, these draw the eye, and they will be in all 4 corners, and then follow on into the outer corner. There'll be a further corner, a smaller version of this, then outside that in the border when we're finished.